is to discuss today the Shittas Ramban and Hashgacha Pratit, and hopefully continue that probably next week or so. We'll leave Hanukkah drushes for the Sivas Hanukkah Shir. If there'll be one, we don't need it for, here we're going to learn. So, starting with a famous Ramban, if you have it in your phone, the Ramban, the end of Parshas Boy, I'd like to look at that. And from there, go further to understand the sources of the Ramban. And then we'll do with parallel Ramban to see how this is terribly taken out of context as usual. And quoted quite often to give a certain hashgacha, which is totally against the Ramban. Okay, Ramban writes, if you see in front of you in Parshas Bay, he was a Shmois Yud Gimel Pasuk Tezayin. Again, I sent it to you on the KBY Shurim site chat, so if you have it, open it up. Ramban discusses how the Nisim Agdolim Hamforsamim that we had of the Eser Makos reintroduced monotheism to the world. That's basically what he writes over there. If one ever reads this whole piece inside, monotheism was totally lost, deteriorating from Derish Enish until Mabul, and then once again afterwards, as soon as the Mabul ended, with greatest respect, the whole place fell apart again. Only Avram Avinu was the only one that somehow championed monotheism, and then once again, when the Bnei Yisrael went into Mitzrayim, it was lost, except for Shevet Levi. We know the Ramban elaborates on this in the Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perek Aleph. All the Jews were totally assimilated. Period. They were total pagans. There was no. They didn't mind believing there's a creator, as we know, but they had nothing to do with him. They were worshiping whatever the sheep, the cat, whatever that was happening. So what happened was that the Kadosh Baruch Hu had to reintroduce monotheism to them through the Eser Samakos, and that's what the Ramban elaborates on in this big piece in Seif Parshas Bay, period Yud Gimel Pasuk Tezayin. Describes how God introduced himself back to man through the Eser Makos, through the Eser Sanisim. As we know, the pasuk says it's the Man Yedu Keni Hashem, Man Yedu Keni Hashem B'Kerev Haaretz, Man Yedu She'en Kamoini B'Chol Haaretz. Those are the three purposes found of the Eser Makos. It's from there the Ramban writes, "Min Anisim Agdolim Hamforsamim," from these big miracles, which are quite popular and known, Adam Moide B'Nisim Anistorm, is then you understand that God created the world and leads the world and manipulates the laws of science. You come to a conclusion that obviously that all of science and everything is a creation of God. And he calls that Nisim Nistorm. Shem Yisayda Terakula. You must believe in Nisim Nistorm. Now, what do those words mean? For some other Nisim Nistorm. Does he describe what the Nisim Nistorm are? What does he mean by Nes? We have to understand the context. What does he call a Nes? Does he mean what we call Teva and Nes? Let's see what it means. Sheim Yisayda Terakula. What? Those Nisim Nistorm, not telling what they are in the meantime. Now, what does he say? Sheim L'Adam Chelik B'Teres Moshe Rabbeinu. You're not part of this covenantal community. Achiyam, until he believes. Shekol Dvareinu U'Mikreinu. All that happens to us, and even that we have to be in Dover and Mikra, all that occurs to us and all things that we do. What does it mean, Dvareinu U'Mikreinu? Mikreinu means things that happen to us. What's Dvareinu? I'm asking you to learn with me. Can you read? What's Dvareinu and what's Mikreinu? Mikra is an occurrence. What's a Dover? Thing. All our things. What does he mean by things? I guess this will be silence today, but I do expect you to think about this because I don't feel like continuing it. You know, this is going to be either you're part of this or not. I go to sleep. I'm tired today. So, Lamaisa, Kol Dvareinu Mikreinu, question. Figure it out because you're very much going to need to understand what's said over here. Kulam Nisim, they're all what you call Nisim. That's what he means this in the story. Whatever Dvareinu and Mikreinu are, we're going to have to define them. They are called Nisim. And that's what he means by Nisim Nistorm. So we really have to know what Dvareinu U'Mikreinu means. Ein b'hem teva u'minago shel olam. What does that mean? In other words, when we say teva is a pseudonym for minago shel olam, means that's the way things are. Equals, they're not something which is God granted or God decided. It's like one could have thought there's a world created, which is there, an old world, and there's a God up there, like the Greeks believed. They believed there's a world, which always was, but there's a God, which is quite a few gods over there, that they play games with your future and they intervene in your life. Have you read anything about well, let's even talk about the earlier Greeks when we talk about the tragedies of Greek. The tragedies of Greek, okay? What are the tragedies of Greek? What do they basically teach you? The Greeks did not believe in a creator. They believed in Olam Kadmon. They never believed that there's guys up there, they play games with you. And Oedipus is going to end up killing his father and marrying his mother. Hello, right? That's probably the only Greek tragedy you know. So because that's probably found in Classics Illustrated. Okay? But at the end of it, I'm just trying to think reality. How else would you know what it is? Okay? How many people have read any Greek tragedies except for Oedipus Rex? Okay, so that's it. So what do you have here? I don't even know how people know how many people have read Oedipus Rex. Right, I tell you, it's probably Classics Illustrated. I know that's how the guys in school, they used to book reports with the comic book version of the classics. Okay, whatever it is, the basic idea behind the Greek tragedies are that man is manipulated. He has a karma, a fate, and it's going to happen, and he can't walk away from it. And it's governed by the boys up in the Olympus. Okay, the boys up in Olympus will decide your future. They never said the boys in the Olympus created the world. There is no do you know the list of the boys in the Olympus? Boys and girls, so well, not many women. Okay, on the Olympus, no one is called creator. Not Zeus and not Jupiter, which depends if you're Roman or Greek, right? No one's the creator. In Norse mythology, Odin, he's not defined as creator. He's defined as the grandpa up in the great forest, which has this crazy dysfunctional family, and they run the world. Okay, no one defined them as creator. I don't know if you read Greek mythology. I appreciate that's what I used to do, when I was a kid. They didn't have all these Yaffa Gans books and all these other nice Jewish things. So we were allowed to read The Hunchback of Notre Dame and other things. Would you believe it? It was still mutter before, now it's probably not mutter anymore. But at the time, that's what you read, okay? So I can tell you right now, no one, Abyssal Shtickle is the Koran I have, no one's a Yetzer HaKoil. No one there is a Yetzer HaKoil. There's no one there which is Yetzer HaKoil. Not even one God there which has Takif Bala Koiches Kulam. They have a lot of different Bala Koiches. And sometimes they fight, sometimes they're friends, sometimes it's a crazy group, okay? But that's what this is. So let's understand before I go further. The chiddush of being a Yetzer HaKoil and therefore dominating everything and therefore controlling everything is the chiddush of monotheism. Okay, let's put this on the table. So now the fact that they said that things happen to us are nisim, what do we say? We're saying basically it's not an old world out there. But are nisim ein b'hem teva. It's not a given reality which was. There's no laws of science which evolved with the Big Bang. Okay, there's not something which is that the Greeks would call olam kadmon. The world always was. Why not? Believe the world always was. You believe God always was. So why not just believe the world always was and believe that the laws of science always were? And just as you believe that God is X, Y, and Z, whatever you believe, I'm not sure, but believe the world was with certain properties, X, Y, and Z, from the beginning of whatever it was. It always was. It's as simple as that. Basically, that's there's two, three shittas in Greece where the Rambam discusses them in the Nevuchim of what it means, Olam Kadmon. This is the one that he thinks is total kfira, because he believes that basically there's no laws of nature that were created by anything, and therefore a circle is a circle, a square is a square. The world was. There's gravity. That's all. water is water, fire is fire. All these are innately part of what always was. If that's the case, they're not nitn l'shinuyim. So once you believe that they're nitn l'shinuyim, you have to come to a conclusion there's someone that manipulates them and created them and therefore governs them. And that's what the Ramban writes. So Ramban says, you got to understand there is no teva. Rather, there is someone which created them. Teva here means to say, it doesn't mean to say there's no laws of science. When it means teva, it means innate reality of nature, which is not controlled or created by God. At that point in time, what does mikra mean? If we talk about mikra, something totally haphazard, the fact that it just happens to be that way. What happens to be that way? It happens to be there's gravity, happens to be there's a circle, happens to be there's a square. All these things happen to be because no one created them. They always were. Let's remember, what were the chidushim of the Aseres HaMakos? That what? That I am God equals Yud Kei Vav Kei Mimenu HaKoil Ayid Mechayfetz V'Yacholos. Okay, number one, that's the Yud Kei Vav Kei. I'm God. Then they said, I'm not only the creator, I'm involved, equals Hashgacha. And Kemaini B'Chaloris means to say, I have the source of everything and there's no partners. It's not like me and Neptune run the world. I'm in the upper echelon and Neptune runs the seas. No. Therefore, what does that mean? Therefore, when you said Ein Kemaini B'Chaloris, God made Borod, which was fire and water together. If you look carefully, that's what it is. Ein Kemaini B'Chaloris. Yes, you put fire and water together. This is not me. This is the Barbanel talking. Okay, so let's understand. He reintroduced the fact that I'm the creator. That's what the Ramban said before. Once you see this, you come to a conclusion. He says, here he writes beforehand, there were deis. Yes, that's what he's talking about. Olam kadmon. In other words, no one created laws of science. They always were. They are not in created form. Everything always was. Okay? He said, look, God, the world always was. We don't have a creator. Pratit, and others people, may be a creator, but he's not involved. He really doesn't care. That's called, does he care about the world? Hashgacha. And finally, excuse me, some people say he's not even interested in knowing what's happening. Some people say he knows what's happening, but doesn't get involved. So there's no creator, no God, no creator. Everything always was. B, as far as creator, did they believe in Avodah Zarah? Yes, they believed in Avodah Zarah. There's no such thing as atheism at that point in history. So what's the Ramban saying? So do you think there was atheists at that point in time that believed in naught? Sorry, that happened very late. Post-Greek era. Kfira Mamish, Epicurus, rare. Even in Yavin, it didn't happen that fast. Nothing. It means to say there was no creator. That's what it means. Okay? There was no person which was a kafir in believing there's no God. There is no God which I am subservient to because he's the source of my existence. That's kafir be'ikr. When he said not believing in Yud Kei Vav Kei, what does that mean? They believed in serving the sun, the moon, or whatever it only be. And we all know Rambam, that they serve the sun. They saw the sun as a minister in the creator's hierarchy, and therefore they honored the sun. They honored the sun because they thought it was a celestial body which can decide to give us heat and light and decide not to. So they didn't just believe there's nothing out there. They were constantly looking upwards towards God. So let's understand that. So the Ramban says that the time, now we're talking about times of Egypt, right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about God now in Egypt has to reintroduce himself. He has to destroy that which is at the moment rampant in Egypt, in the area, and reintroduce the Jews to monotheism. So what does he write? He says they're makrish kafir be'ikr. What does that mean? He says, "V'omrim ki olam kadmon." That's what it means. They're kafir in the ikr that he's a bayre kol olamim. To put this, to have it very clear. Means we don't believe his name is Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Mahave Tamid V'Akol Mimenu B'Chayfetz V'Yacholos. That's what they're kafir in. What does ikr mean? Kafir be'ikr. You don't believe that there's a bayre olamis. Has to be very clear. That's one. Some believe there was a Bayra Ilimus, but they say he created the world. I don't know, he was bored one day, made the world, but then he stopped. These other things to do. Other people believe, no, he created the world and he is interested and he knows, but he doesn't get involved. Doesn't get involved. In other words, he created the world. Now, if he created the world, it means he created the laws of science. So he is involved because he created the laws in science. And by definition, if he created the laws of science, it means he's preserving the laws of science. Because he didn't create something finite outside of himself. If that would be the case, he would now become infinite. He would no more be infinite. By definition, if you believed in an infinite God and you say he's a creator, you must come to a conclusion which is very strong here. And let me explain something to you. There are two ways of influencing the world around you. One is by emanation. The other is by action. What does emanation mean? It's a pasuk. When Yeshua is mismana through Moshe, it says, "V'hatzalta v'ruchacha olav." What does hatzalah mean? So Rashi says, brings the medrash, hatzalah means you're emanating something which does not diminish anything by you. Nothing changed with you, but your aura, if I may say, creates a reality that now he has a koich v'anhaga. The smicha created ha'atzalta meruchacha. Nothing is mismade from you, but there's something happening. There's nothing changed with you, but you emanate something. That's what we call in Kabbalah, we call the first shlav of Metzias called Atzilus. Atzilus means it's nothing more than an emanation of God. There is no idea that there's an I, thou there. It's me and expressing myself. Not even expressing, emanating. Should I give you an example of emanation? Yeah, I'll give you an example. If you understand, you see things when you live a broader life. Should you ever have the pleasure of going to a game reserve, I mean like Kruger Park or something like that, you'll see something very interesting. Look at prides of lions. The prides of lions have a very interesting familiar structure. The lady, she's a shaved hair, like a Meishram de Kile Yidina, and she goes out to do the work. She hunts, she raises the kids, she does everything. She hunts. He has his angeliked, he's under the tree, ain't going anywhere. She comes back, with the basa ben shineh, as every b'sar taiva in the pasuk, and she brings the footwear to her strimal-wearing husband. And he's sitting there under the tree. She brings it to him. She moves backwards. You can see this. I've seen this. Okay, but aim of a year, rest of the science. Actually, Molly Kreisoi. And then they like a Rebbe, then he gives Shirayim to the family. This is what the Maisa, what's happening. The guy doesn't move, but you should ever see the aim of a yira around him. He doesn't move. He doesn't have to move. But you have this MGM thing, the light. That's the Baba Maisas. Maybe when he's like bored, so he wants to make some noise, he just sits there. No, you should see. It's unbelievable to see this, and they're all daldamas. It's like standing in front of a footwear. It's just like mirachak Hashem nearly. He doesn't do a thing, but he controls the whole world around him. He has a certain stature which emanates authority and creates distance. It's hashpah through just being there. Okay, that's called you change things, but just presence. Do you understand? It's mamish called he's matzalas atzmai. He doesn't have to go move his hand and his feet. For kids, garnished. He sits, you know what I mean? But he controls the world around him. That's his malchus. Okay? And the shayr says this is all, that's called hatzalah. That's my dub. When I saw this the first time, wow, years ago, like 25 years ago when I was there the first time, I said, oh, yes, verstech malchus, yes, verstech va'atzalta meruchacha. This is Pasha Olam Atzilus. You're mashpia a mitzias, you're creating a mitzias, but there's no yesh, there's no pa'ula. It's just ich ben du, and it's mashpia on the mitzias. That's called va'atzallah. Now you have to understand something which is very, very important. The original Bereshis bara, as we know, is God emanated two elements, two primary elements. Ramban, Parshas Bereshis, right? That was called in Kabbalah, it's called Olam Hatzilus. Hatzolah. It's not Bria, it's Hatzolah. That's where it starts. He emanated two basic elements. which are called Shamayim Va'aretz, which means two primary matters, which if you don't fit, you'll call two types of energies, if we call that form. And the energy from which the type of energy which afterwards is formed, the Oilim, the Shammais, and all these other things, that's called Shamayim. And then the energy which afterwards is the primary matter of everything which is tangible in the world that we experience, which is called Oretz. Two matters. As opposed to one primary matter, there are two primary matters. As I state the Ramban. That was the only thing was Moitzi Mi'ayin Liyesh. And that's what he calls their Bereshis Baruch. It's a Moitzi Mi'ayin Liyesh. But those who learn Kabbalah understand there's a Yisod before Bria. It doesn't mean Olam HaBria. It's an Olam HaAtzilus, but it's called Baruch because it's Mi'ayin Liyesh. Okay, just want you to write some first that the only thing which is Mi'ayin Liyesh is the two matters, the Shemayim Va'aretz. Those matters had no form, and therefore, but they were capable of attaining any type of form. Tayu means, what is this? It's like a jaw dropper equals, has no definition. When you talk of an energy without form, what is it? This is garnished. Bayu, but has all the potential of being something. Now, how do you create a reality through energy? Well, you did go to high school, so you know that science believes that all of reality is nothing more than one matter called energy, but the compression in different types of forms of compression create a different molecular structure, nuclear structure, and that's what you are. Basically, gas, liquid, and solid are all one thing. The only different compressions of form create different molecular structure, and therefore that's what matter is. But Lamaisi, if you would take away form from matter, okay, it would all be the same thing. Mistama, you went to high school. If you didn't, go to high school. Okay? Okay, but that's the Chadavar Pasha. Memele Kumtais, what did God do for 6 days? That's what Ramban says. He didn't have to create any new matters. He just like made forms in those matters. For the whole 6 days, Vayomer Yehi equals, he's going to now make a different form for this matter. A different form for this matter. There's going to be a form which is going to create horses and dogs. There's going to be a form which is going to create trees and leaves. There's going to be a form which is going to create water. Okay, these are forms. That's what it's called Elokim. Elokim means compressing. Gvulos, okay? It means God created gvulos, forms in Hebrew, okay? Gvulos, boundaries. He gave form to that primary matter. So that's what you had over there. So let's understand carefully. Once you understand that now let's get to something straight. Is this form independent of God? If it is, that means that God was infinite, but now he's created forms which are not him, equals an independent entity, equals he is now finite. Well, that could be. How do you know God's infinite now? Because you said Shir Yichud on Leil Yom Kippur, but you didn't even know what you were saying, so I'm not worried about it. But if you said Shir Yichud, you would know. Or you learned Rambam. One of the biggest rise, the Rambam said, that basically Kosh Baruch Hu doesn't have a goof because he's infinite. Maybe how can he be infinite? He created a world. The teretz is, again, no. What you are nothing more than that energy is an emanation of his existence. When you emanate something, you are creating something reality which does not change anything in you. The marshal of creation in the primary form is Atzilus. So how that works, I don't know. I really don't understand the charisma of a lion. Okay, but reality is this. I begin to say when we say when Kabbalah writes that the first stage of creation is Atzilus, what's it saying? It's saying that basically all energy is an emanation of God, not something which is when you call creation, you would say of something which is independent. No, it's an emanation, and for 6 days the earth was made form to that emanation. That's what happened. Equals. Now I'll explain this to you very simply. If the lion moves away to another tree, is the aura still there? Are people still afraid to stand there? The daldamas? Actually, the chair of Reb Nachman. What is it over there? No. Nicht du, in the ganze Sache nicht da. It's very simple. If the matzel isn't here, so there's no hatzolah. So be because he didn't create something outside of himself. His presence is what is the source of this energy of emanation. Take away the presence, there is no emanation. As Ramban writes before, if hypothetically God would cease to exist, everything else would be nil. Nothing would exist. Mamash Lashon Ramban. Why? It's Rambam. I don't need chassidus for this. It's a never pashut. Because it means to say, because if you don't believe that all this is nothing more than an emanation of God's essence, God being, then you're saying that there is something independent. He created something independent. Equals, he is no more infinite. Now, how do we know Taka that he's infinite? It's a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ani have Shishayahu, Ani havaya lo shinisi." I, the creator of all and the source of all, have never changed. How can you be called havaya, which means mahavet tamid, menu akol b'cheves v'yochaylis, and you're trying to tell me and you're not changed? If you created something independent of you, you are changed. If you say Ani havaya, I, the creator, never changed, equals, it means to say that although I'm a mahaveh, I didn't change. And what does that mean? The Torah says, because this is not really independent, it's an emanation of my existence. I stop emanating, that ain't happening. Like hypothetically, since God does control himself, I imagine, he's not supposed to rely on, he can turn the switch down on emanating. It's very simple, because every emanation is a gilui. He can choose to go into himself. It doesn't have to emanate. Fact of the matter is, he didn't emanate before he emanated. Olam Hatzil is the beginning of a bria, but the bria was it's something Kadosh Baruch Hu decided to be Baira before, and he didn't decide to be Baira. So you stop deciding to be Baira. What you're saying here is something very clear. You're saying that reality is nothing more than an emanation, a constant emanation of God. It is not really independent. Objectively speaking, nothing exists outside of being an emanation of God. What is that emanation? That emanation, God created a consciousness and an awareness in which we perceive ourselves as distant from him. We don't see ourselves as, just as you don't see yourself as your molecules. Does anybody perceive themselves as molecules? I don't think so. You don't perceive yourselves as cells, let alone molecules. Okay, you don't even perceive yourselves as blood vessels. You don't perceive anything in science. Garnished. You don't relate, oh, that glass of H2O. Yeah, since when do you see that? No, give me a favor, water. You know what I mean? In other words, we don't even see anything in its true objective form. No one perceives anything in the true objective form. Your whole language is subjective. Your whole experience is subjective. Why do you call liquid liquid? Why don't you call it compressed energy? Because I don't experience the compression of energy. When you have a language, what's your language coming from? It's from the world that you have. What is your world? My world equals that phenomenon, which if I'm too fast here, stop me. This is just like out of base, so no. But if you don't understand, please raise your hand. This is quite important. This is like classic illustration of Aleph Beis of Emunah. Okay, but you have to understand. Like, do you experience science? No. Do you experience chemistry? No. Because what you experience is nothing more than you experience. You don't experience anything with your brain. Thinking, an endangered phenomenon. No one thinks. You collect experiences. That's what you do. If we would put our brains on monitors, that would go one line. Okay? Your experiences would be jumping up and down. Because you look at reality through what you internalize through your five senses, never through your mind. If you would experience the reality through your mind, and you had somewhat of an education, hopefully, well, I don't know if you're going to go you won't have anything more. But if you go to a decent college, you'll end up having, knowing more. Okay, so then at the end of the day, you're going to get an education, hopefully, and you're going to know a bit more about sciences. I mean, let's say if someone's going to be a doctor, or he's going to do a PhD in chemistry, he wants to do sciences. Okay, he's going to see things in another light. It's a davar pasha. Now let's understand. No one looks at this that way. The old saying is, just because I'm a professor of math, I don't have to be an equation. You know what I mean? I'm a professor of philosophy. It doesn't mean I have to think. You know what I mean? As I get this height, right? That's the way it works. So let's understand. No one looks at things. What they only do things look at the world through their experience through 5 senses. What I can touch, what I can smell, what I can see with my einei basar. That's why I define reality. And that's your language. And that's why you call it water. You don't call it hydrogen, oxygen. And that's why you call it liquid and don't say it's compressed energy. Because you're not thinking in terms of science, you're thinking or physics, you're thinking in terms of experience. The perception of what this is in its core reality, which you don't really experience through your senses, is only if you perceive the world through the gray matter between your ears. That's another world. That's totally another world. A world of experiencing things through thought and see something which is objective. You choose to see a very myopic world. That's your language. Our language is myopic. It's describing a myopic experience. Your experience of the world is equivalent to the ant's experience of the world, which is slightly higher. He also experiences the world through his senses, or dogs with their nose. So that's how you do the same thing. He happens to have better senses than you. The dog hears high-pitched voices. Bees, wow, have better sight than you. They experience ultraviolet light that you don't. So if I tell you ultraviolet light, you say, yeah, I know, tell me about it. I think it's enough. Kamina, what hours I should go for sunbathing? That's all the only enough Kamina they think about. You know what I mean? Ultraviolet light, right. Oh, I know what, a dog whistle, because you may have had a dog, so you know the dog whistle is, you don't hear it, but it's like a tkiyas shofar. I don't hear a thing, but somehow the dog does. Hopefully it works. Same through tkiyas shofar. Ich weiß what this is. God hears it, it works. You know, that's, I always look at people, it's tkiyas shofar, like someone's blowing a dog whistle. Okay? I'm not Messiah here at all. Or you shame him, give me a break. The Ramban maybe, yeah. But God listens because he hears high-pitched voices. You know what I mean? Don't want to sound terrible, but that's what Ruben Alma looks like, okay? So they have to understand the Yesod. Your language is not a language of objective reality. It's a language which is myopic, which deals only with how the phenomena is internalized through 5 senses. Is that pashut? Hello? Does anybody disagree? Does anybody not understand? Do I have to explain this again? No, thank you. Right. So now that we know that, that's a biyas b'kutcha. So let's understand. But you realize there's a whole world outside of that. Now, if you went to school, you know, right? If we would only be living only with our 5 senses, we'd still have to light fires in caves and wear bearskins and say, walk around with clubs, you know, right? It's because, thank God, there are those people which actually try to think. And thank God for all those great people which did that. That's why we're not in the cave, not wearing bearskins, and not schlepping our wives by her hair, you know, with a club, like a Flintstone. And say that's exactly what we're doing. Why? Because there were and are people that actually live in a world of thought. Why do you think Talmidei Chacham are called Bainim? Al Tikra Banayich Ela Bainayich. Okay, what does that mean? So everything means Talmidei Chachamim. All I said is builders. Why are you calling it Talmidei Chachamim? Maybe it's a Kablani Binyan. It's contractors. Why did Chazal decide? How do we know the Talmidei Chacham Mav Shal Ba'olam Shenem V'Chol Banayich L'Mudei Hashem? Al Tikri, I'm not going there. What every Al Tikri means is Agoy Shashir for itself. And there's a drasha called Al Tikri. Usually because there's a problem in the mikvah, that's why they say Al Tikra. Okay, I think I once discussed it somewhere in Sukkah when I taught a shir over here. What's the Agdoros of an Al Tikri? Doesn't matter. But okay, Naniach, so it says Banayach. Would I tell you, builders, would you call it Talmidei Chachamim, or would you say Chol Banayach L'Mudei Hashem? Must be the contractors in ancient Babylon, they were big Talmidei Chachamim. Since when is a builder a name for a Talmidei Chacham? You've built anything, you don't know how to take the garbage out. So what are you doing? Why are you called a builder? Never bothered? Probably not. Okay, says it's a pasuk in Chumash. Was steht a pasuk in Chumash? Okay, I'll get here somehow. The pasuk says in Chumash that when the serpent, that snaky fellow, whatever he really was, okay, that big animal that stood upright and had legs and then developed into this python or whatever. These big 17-yard snakes, they exist. I saw one. Okay, so there was, he was stood upright. This is called the Nachash, and he actually spoke. Cool. Okay, so this Nachash fellow tells Eve. He says, "Listen, what are you talking about? You eat this fruit, this grape, okay, or wheat. That's what it was, right? The grape or wheat." Says, you eat this grape or wheat, you will be like the big people that control reality. Why? Because you will then know subjective reality. You'll know Tova Ra means you'll experience subjective. You'll relate to the world not for what it is, but what it is to you. I'm quoting Ramban that we all know. Okay, Ramban Nevuchim Perik Beis. You're there. Tova Ra means you will not judge it what is objectively. MS Sheker. You won't think like mathematics. Does it fit? Does that fit with the will of God and purpose of creation? No. You will say, what is it for me? Taiv, for me. Ra, for me. Those what those words mean. Rambam said the Taiv and Ra are subjective words describing my reaction to things. Not what it is, but how I react to it. Emes and Sheker is describing what it is. Does it fit with the purpose? Does not fit with the purpose. How do I feel about that? That's Taiv and Ra, right? I hope we understand that. So he says, you will be like great people. So Rashi writes, Bainei Olamis. You'll create worlds. Okay, I've been around for quite a while yet. Has anybody seen anybody since, did that serpent con her? He says, you're going to build worlds. And well, she probably said, okay, Mr. Serpent, we're the for the worlds. We're the worlds that we were supposed to be creating. Don't tell me he didn't ask the question. I mean, that could be pathetic, okay? I mean, your Rebbe in school should have explained this to you. If not, he should not be a Rebbe in school. He should be a Chassidish Rebbe that doesn't have to explain anything, gets away with it, okay? But really, I'm asking a serious question. What's made Why? Because you will know good and bad. I know a lot of good and bad. Have I built anything yet? And the answer is yes, a big world is created through subjectivity. It's called what is a world? What does the word world mean? Does it mean globe? Planet? What does world mean? When I say I exist, I live in the world, what is a world? Your world is the phenomena that you experience through your five senses. That's your world. You don't experience anything else. That's your world. Okay, your framework of experience. Other people who live in a more profounder world, a world of thought, they have a different world. The problem is when you live in the rigid world of truth, you have very little place for imagination. It's either right or wrong, man. Whenever this guy starts telling me, I ask him a question, and he says, well, I feel, so I stop, I feel my toes. Your feelings are not relevant to me. What do you know? I feel. Do you ever have the I feel? Oh, and then they get worse. They say, I believe. Says, I believe. That's the Schwarzes over there in the church where I grew up. I believe. Don't believe. Believe in God or believe in the faithfulness of your wife. What's my, I believe. You're supposed to know. I never heard these guys say, I believe, I feel. Hashgacha is Allah chenichas nida. What's that Hashgacha Satan Midah? What is that Hashgacha? Ani margish. Ata margish yefemo. These are what are these things? They're trying to say, I really don't know, but I'm comfortable with this, right? I feel. Or if you want to say, I really don't understand the thing I'm saying, but I'm willing to trust this because it works. That's called I believe. I believe, but that means I don't understand what I'm talking about, but I believe. I believe. I know about the Schwarzes and Bed-Stuyvesant where I grew up. I believe. What's it? What do you want? What do you know? What do you think? Those are the verbs supposed to be used, by the way, right? My students already know. You don't do I believe with me. I believe, you can believe, I believe in Jesus. What do you mean you believe? You know, you don't know. Okay, I think or I don't think. You say, I think. Okay, that's very good. First of all, I'm very impressed. Blachman says, I think. This is showing that he's an endangered species. He thinks, which is a tremendous thing. I am very impressed when a Blachman says, I think. It's beautiful. It's for me, it's like, like the Fifth by Beethoven. Yeah, I hear beautiful music. A kid is thinking. He may be right, maybe he's using the gray matter between his ears and he's not dying. He doesn't have a straight thing in the monitor. He's jumping. Okay, but one thing says, okay, but when you say good or bad, you're not talking about I think. You're saying I feel. Good and bad is I feel this is good. I feel comfortable with this. I feel uncomfortable with that. That's called good and bad. You don't know, you feel. And therefore, ultimately, you create a whole new sense of reality. It's called the world of imagination. I feel comfortable with this. I feel embarrassed with this. And therefore, let's be honest, as we discussed multiple times, there is no scientific difference between the uncovered nose and the covered reproductive organ. There is no science or biology or anything which should make a difference. And that's why Adam, when he was living in the world of I know, he walked around in his freaking birthday suit. As soon as he experienced, I feel, when I get over here, I feel that this is the pshat. You feel your toes. As soon as he feels, he's living in Dinyanis. In his world of Dinyanis, oh, this is awkward, this is right. These are the new science. Have you found the animal which wears trousers? Have you seen the cow that wears a bra? Didn't find anything like it. The only chaya which lives in the world of Dinyanis is the man. Because that's what's called Hislay Elohim. He created new worlds of imagination. He has walked away from the world of thought, which is a totally different experience of the world. In that world, you experience math, science, physics, metaphysics, ideals, and that defines the reality in front of you. And that gives interpretation to what you experience through your senses. But then what's dominant, these are become just tools, and what defines them is what's over here. Masha'en Kain, this is like, you lost the hammer and it ain't working over there because you forgot to put gas in the machine. So you define things only by your experiences equals, that's a world of imagination. It's a myopic world which you define through your imagination. As simple as that. The Talmud Chacham is a person which builds new worlds outside of the world of imagination. He actually sees it cerebrally and ultimately gives it real bigger meaning and purpose and direction than the typical, whatever the word opposite of Talmud Chacham is, okay, experiences. The one who is not the Talmud Chacham, because Talmud Chacham does not mean a sugya splitter which has receptacles of information. As a Grabba Moritz, as far as he's not building anything, he's building notebooks, okay? But a Talmud Chacham here means the person who is a Chacham. The Zuta describes what's a Talmud Chacham. It says that literally he's a collector of information, a sponge. He's a spike. He experiences all reality like a sponge. He's a Zachron, equals, he defines it in context of past, present, and future. He's giving it, okay, how does this add up? You should read it. And there's 15 miles of Talmud Chacham. They're all talking about a man of broad intelligence, which soaks up the world and experiences it intelligently. That's what Talmud Chacham is. When we say Chol B'naich Limudei Hashem, yeah, the real builders of world, B'nei Oilimus, of the Oilimus of Emes, not the Oilimus of Dimyonis, bringing back the Oilimus of Seichel, those are Talmidei Chachamim. That's the pshat in what you. If you say that in Siddur, maybe you don't say in Kelikenu, you're like the Ramah. But if you say it, that's what it means. They're Marbim Shalom. How's it Marbim Shalom Ba'ilam? Zoktan Netziv. What are they doing? Because since they live in a world of thought and not subjectivity, they can accept multiplicity, and they can be inclusive. Because they can live with the reality of Shem Patzufim Shabbos, Kachin Deoseim Shabbos. And they can also understand the complexity of things, that there are multiple ways of interpretation. Those who live only in the world of experience and subjectively, if you're not with me, you're against me. And the Tzif says, it doesn't say, Marbim Shalom Ba'olam means to say there's a lot of Shalom in the world. There's a lot of harmony between different views. But the Talmud Chacham, the Isha Sechel, builds worlds in which is inclusive. It's open to interpretations, and therefore, but not cerebral interpretations. And in my world, I can see this having, what do you say, Shnei Dinim? 25 Dinim if you want, okay? As far as that's concerned. It's a Netziv which says this. So this is the idea of the building of the worlds. Getting back to this, La'or Kol Zeb. So this is just to understand a term, okay? When we say over here that you have to understand that that we're talking about world. We're talking about world means to say that which you experience with your mind or with your senses. That's what we're talking about. We talk about mikra, minhago shel olam. What does minhago shel olam mean? Minhago shel olam meant, well, if there's no creator, so there's a certain reality, has laws which define it, and they keep on happening. That's what teva is in this context. What's he say? Ain't teva umiknaga shalom. What does he mean? Because once we understand that once we believe there's a creator, there's nothing which is old. Everything is programmed. Therefore, all occurrences or all things that happen, what are occurrences and things? Occurrences, the things occur. But for example, I got stuck in a traffic jam. So, okay, what caused it? Well, we can discuss oil skidding, and therefore a car turned over, and that's a mikra, which you understand that was arranged by God. What was arranged by God? Did he want that car to skid? Is that what he's saying? Or he's saying, no, the laws of Teva, which are governed, are God-given. Once we understand that we're talking in context of what? He's talking about from the Nisim Agdolim, which introduced what? An omnipotent God, which is the creator of all. We now relate to the many miracles of nature. We understand that is also so. And therefore, he says that what? There's no teva or minhaga shalayla. What does that mean? Does he think there's no laws of science? What's his laws of science? Minhaga shalayla means the laws of science, right? Hello? There's no laws of science? The answer is no, there's laws of science. And I'm going to prove to you in a minute in the Ramban Mefurish. There are laws of science which God preserves and wants those laws to stay. It's the Mefurish Ramban, which I will show you shortly. Okay? Should I show it to you now? I'll show it to you now. Look at the Ramban in Bereshis, Perik Yud Ches. Where the Ramban says in Bereshis and Perik Yud Ches, Pasuk Yud Tes, you have it in your sheets there. But Nachon Beinai, it's like at the end. It's like the last four sources. But Nachon Beinai, Shehu Yidiah Yermos Ki Yidiat Hashem Shi Hashgachato B'Olam HaShafel Hu Lishmor HaKlalim. Translate that. The Hashgacha of God in this world, first and foremost, is to preserve the principal rules. Equals, he created principal rules. Gravity. He decided there will be gravity. He wants to continue the gravity being there. He will not decide to change. That's the hashgacha, to make sure a constant will the gravity stays. A constant will that hydrogen will mix with oxygen and you will have water. There are laws of science. Those are called klalim. V'gam bnei adam munachim bo lemikrim. But within those klalim, human beings, Homo sapiens, are basically live in that reality, munachim bo, to the haphazard. What does that mean? You believe that the laws of nature are created by God, but those laws of nature have their own dynamic. And therefore, if you're going to sum up, if you think for 1 minute that if you fall, you know you're going to fall, because yes, if you fall out a window, you're going to fall, because that's the klalim, the mikre to you based on the klalim. Things, munachim bo lemikrim, you are now governed by the laws of nature. equals if there will be a coronavirus running around, and there is one, okay? And this guy with corona like sniffs, like, blows his nose out, talks to you and doesn't have one of these things around him, right? And the saliva hits you, you're gonna be sick. He calls this mikrim. What does mikrim mean? Yeah, it is a occurrence due to the laws of nature. You are governed by the laws of nature. Munachim bo lemikrim. You are governed by the laws of nature. Ad bo'es pkudatam, until your time to leave comes. Once your time to leave, you're no more bound by the laws of science, because now your body is finished and you're going up there. There's no science to be had, and there's no mikrim of the laws of science to be had. Ava b'chasidah, but those who are very, very righteous, well, the Ramban describes it in another place where I'll show you, means to say they are constantly living with an acute God awareness. They're mekayim l'davka boy. Where the Ramban writes a whole piece of what the Dovka boy means. They think and live him and breathe him and walk him 24/7. That's what Chasidah means. It doesn't mean you're frum. Well, if you live that way, you will be very religious, okay? But it doesn't mean you're observant. Observance is not enough. It talks about Chasidim. He explains it. You'll see in the Lashon by the Dovka boy, means living with an acute God aware. They're not Masiach Das from Kadosh Baruch Hu ever. It's like the Zohar Kodesh writes on Yankov Avinu, this week's parsha. How could he bow down to Esav? Asalachni Fadim Russia. So no, he was bowing down to Kodesh Baruch Hu, because he's always in front of him. Esav was there too, Gzunter hate. That's what the Zohar Kodesh writes. But he's constantly bowing to God. That's called the Dovka boy. Do you understand? Those are the Hasidim, in which, what do we say? Yosim Elav Libai, God will think about him and care about him. Yosem Elav Libai. Ladas, I say beprat, to know him beprat, as opposed to klolim. There's klolim, and you're munach to the mikra of the klolim. But Hasidim, he wants to know you befrat. What does the idea beprat mean? He will guard you constantly from what? From the mikrim, which are due to the klolim. In other words, what he's saying here is that I want us to understand clearly this Ramban, just reading text. We'll bring you all the Gemaras afterwards. Ramban says that basically God created laws of science. And those laws of science have what it takes. For example, laws of science say, and the laws of reality. For example, if you're going to be walking in a war zone, let's say, there's this big gang war somewhere in my old days, I would say Bed-Stuy, but it's gentrified. Some other place, where the gang wars, whatever it be. Okay. And you decide to nonchalantly walk. So I'm not a Balavera, I'm a Tzaddik Gomer, I'm a good, very religious Jew. I have no reason to die. It's the law you base, and you have to have Ruach HaKodesh, it's not your time. Will you die? Yes, you will die. Because the laws of science say that with certain philosophy of bullets shooting all over the place, they go where the guy shot towards you, you're going to get it, unless you duck. You're going to die. You're going to stuff yourself with fast foods, equals eat a lot of hamburgers and potato chips. You're going to end up having heavy cholesterol and clogged arteries. And you have a great chance of not making it too long. Okay. Are we going to blame God or blame you idiot for killing yourself with a long-term bad investment? Do we blame God for that? What happens if a guy is a speeding idiot? He puts his feet down, get a lead foot on the gas pedal, he forgets the brake, and that foot, he ends up in a wall. Is that his time come? No. Do you blame God? Why would you blame God if he's an idiot? Maybe I should blame God every Aveira I do. That would be nice. Obviously, God meant it to happen. He doesn't need control of the world. Everything's from God. Right? If he takes my Averis, I'm happy. Well, so far, he doesn't do that. He takes for granted that I have free will and I can do some mistakes and I can't pin the tail on him. Is that clear? Unless you don't believe in Schar and Oynish. Okay? If you believe in Schar and Oynish and Averis and Mitzvahs, that means to say you have free will and don't blame it on God and don't attribute it to God. You put on tefillin today. Was that Hashgacha Pratit? Ein mikra ba'olam. Everything comes from God. Yeah, that's why I put on tefillin. So how come I get schar for this? Can anybody really think that Ramban Darsh's Bay means that? You have to be a freak in the morals. Because if you're going to believe that, you should attribute to God everything you do and all your decisions. Everything is bashert, right? Bashert. It was meant to be. Well, it was meant to be that you should put Daven Ma'ariv today. So why are you going to get, when you go up there, they're going to give you a little piece of cherry cake, for Daven Ma'ariv today. Why? It's all God. Hakol b'dei Shemayim. Afilu yireh Shemayim. No. So that's not in his hands. Oh, so he gave up. So religion is not up to him. That what it means? But everything else is totally Exeris Elyon? Is that what the Ramban's saying? Aren't you reading it out of context? Take two pieces of Ramban and read them together and let's see how you can reconcile it. Here the Ramban says clearly that God, the Hashgacha, the overall in the world, the Hashgacha is for principles. Principles, now, is he saying that there's no din of schar and einish? Take every piece of Ramban. Does he say only principles? I don't know. I said Kriyashma just recently. It says if I behave myself, we get rain. We don't behave ourselves, man. There's a whole Megillah Esther that says what he does to us over there. The Teich is very long. Okay? So I'm trying to figure out. He says here, people are Nasan Mikrim. He says he's not talking about schar v'einish, you idiot. He's talking in context of nature. And there is a Hashgacha called Hashgacha Saklalim, which God wants to happen. And because of that, Hashgacha Saklalim are that animals do, the leaves fall off trees. It's autumn. Okay? Go to up, in New York, it's beautiful to see the orange and yellow trees going when you go upstate. They turned yellow. Is that like God decreed? And you're going to turn orange. You're going to turn yellow. God's pretty busy figuring out the leaves. Okay, maybe it's a possibility. But if that's the case, that means to say that nothing happens without Exerim Milamala. Ask yourself a simple question. Ask yourself a simple question. Does that mean God has Hashgacha Pratis on everything? Here it says not that way. He says Hashgacha on Klalim, and they're called Mikra. It doesn't mean it's haphazard. It means, no, there are laws of nature. And therefore, if you go in a gun war and someone shoots, you're going to die. Did God decree you to die? No. Were you an idiot? Yes. Let's say did you die because you're an idiot? Yes. Okay. You ate cholesterol foods, you're going to die? Yes. Are you an idiot? Yes. Every idiotic thing you do, you're going to blame God. Start working out and eating healthy foods. Okay. What's Kanichtan? I don't know how to learn. Zetzechaisa was Bashert. No, idiot. Learn. Okay. I'm trying to say, I need to understand, if you're going to say that everything, even the leaves and the trees fall off because of the direct decree of God, what about by putting on tefillin today? Are you going to think that everybody dies is because God decreed him to die? Did his time come? Was Hashgacha Pratis that he should drive like a drunken driver and then get killed? Was that the idea? I just want to know I'll show you the Gemara soon. Is that what you believe? That's the first question you have to ask yourself. In other words, if that's the case, he's not going to be Ma'abadas Muladas. We shouldn't bury him like a Kfurs Chamor. And the halacha is that a person doesn't be measured, you bury him like a Kfurs Chamor Ba'amida because he's Ma'abadas Muladas. So the halacha doesn't agree with you. It doesn't blame God for you committing suicide. No. So what does he mean? Let's understand carefully. There's klalim. In other words, they have the free. You're going to catch a cold. Hey, okay, what does that mean? It means that you went in the street without a sweater. You got sick. You're an idiot. You didn't take a flu shot. You're an idiot. You went with all these places with these guys that don't care about COVID, and you went off on your Shabbat Chavshit that you got COVID. Don't blame God. It's not Hashgacha Pratis. You're an idiot. Why blame God for every idiotic thing you do? What's the rule here? If you took a gun and shot yourself, you're also going to say you're going to blame God. So what's the thing? Shooting yourself and eating not healthy and driving like a crazy man, or getting drunk and being sick afterwards and getting yourself hepatitis because you used a bad needle. You're also going to blame God for this. You injected the stuff into yourself. A guy behaved like this thing, got himself HIV. Is that Hashgacha Pratit or is that the klolim? That's mamish the klolim. And these nasan lemikrim. You're going to inject yourself with a bad needle, well, and probably for a flu shot. You know what I mean? And you got yourself HIV. No, was that a schar? Is that? Oh, no, I'm a holy kid. I'm a good boy. I died with a minion. Is it dafn? Is it einish, or is it because you were suicidal? Is every suicide einish? I'm trying to get you real mixed up. I mean, you need to answer these questions. What are the limits to what we believe in Hashgacha Pratit? So it starts, first of all, with this piece here. There are laws of science, and you are governed by those laws of science. But there are holy people, or laws of science includes odds, capabilities, mikrim. There are realities. If you're going to have a plane to catch, and you're in Brooklyn, and you got to go up the belt to JFK. And, the belt is the worst place to go in the morning. Like, it's impossible. Does anybody drive in New York? It's like, you don't go to the belt. Also, the Van Wyck, anywhere near LaGuardia, it's the wrong place to be. Get yourself a helicopter. Okay, these are not, does anybody drive? Does anybody live in the world? Okay, you know what I mean. It's mamish nishkin makkah. Okay? So you don't do a thing like that. You want to go, you have a plane to catch. You don't say it's in the morning, mamish by rush hour. Ich gehe jetzt, I'm going to go on the belt. Think of 2 hours. This is a 20-minute freaking ride when it's clear. You understand? But that's the way it is. The guy doesn't listen to winds, on the radio, doesn't know that there's a backup there. And therefore he goes, he's so happy with his cup of coffee and he's going down the road, but he's stuck and he misses the plane, misses there for a business deal, and mamish, his portfolio goes down. Is this Hashgacha Pratit, or it means you're an idiot? You're an idiot. You could have opened up winds, the radio station, and they would have told you that they're on the belt and you would have done side street driving. You didn't. Pre-ways, I'm thinking pre-ways, you understand? So you would have done side street driving. Everybody, you go through Roseville over there. It gets a chanetza in the area. You don't go on the belt. That's the last thing you do. The text is, so are we going to say it's Hashgacha Pratit? We say, you're an idiot. I vote for the latter. Because if you have the capability of controlling yourself, you simply, what do you want God to protect you from yourself? God does not protect you from yourself. You walked in the street, it's freezing cold, you decide to say that you're Superman, and you're going to walk around because, it's not cold. This isn't cold, because you probably have to impress some female over there. So you're walking like a who knows what, and then you get yourself pneumonia, okay? It's a zognis, it's oinish, of an avera, it's Hashgacha Pratit. Lav dafka, it's because you're an idiot. And God does not protect idiots from themselves. The only idiots which are protected from themselves are chassidim. A person which is davik b'bayra, even God won't let him do something stupid. He won't let him get into you. He'll make sure that he'll intervene, make sure he goes to a side street, or make sure that he wakes up early, or make sure that God will intervene. And that's what it says over here. Equals in juxtaposition to the klolim. Other people he doesn't protect from the klolim. Chasidav he protects from the klolim. The shmira from what? From the mikrim, which are from the klolim. I know how to read. Everybody is governed by laws of odds, laws of science, etc. Okay? And that bullet may hit you one place or the other. Well, could be. So when everyone tells me every bullet has an address, defined by the laws of science. Okay? Get that straight. When you're in a war zone and you get a bullet, it doesn't mean your time came. It may not be einish. It could just be you're in a bad place. I will show you all the Gemaras dealing with this. These are often the Gemaras, but I just want to see how we see it in a Ramban per se. First of all, I want to uproot basic axioms which people are comfortable with. Then I will show you the Gemaras. But first, I read the Ramban. And he's more important than G'dolei Rishonim. Steht them Mefurish. But see them, Ladas say befrat, as opposed to the Klolim that he said a sentence before. From what? From those mikrim of the Klolim. God will never stop knowing him, equals intervening with his life. Hashgacha, Yedias Hashem, and God will never be Masiach Das from ever. He will always remember him. Ketam, as the pasuk says in Iyah, Perek Lamed Zayim, Lo yigara mitzadik le'abadvav. Enough. God will never let his eyes away from the tzaddik. So we have a term called tzaddik, which Ramban here explains chassid, which he explains in other places, which means dovek ba'Hashem, which is, this is mamash a Rambam Amar Nevuchim, and the Ramban in Iyov elaborates on this. You have it right here in my friend's book. This is a version of the Ramban written by an old friend of mine, Yudad Dvir. We have yeshiva together. At the bottom, he quotes the big Ramban in Iyov, and for you have it in front of you. You have your phones. I suggest you read that Ramban in Iyov. I'm not going to do it now because I want to make this as short as possible today. Okay. Once you do that, you do the homework, the legwork, then I'll fill up all the gaps. But here's the first. Ubo b'zeh psukim rabim k'dichsiv hinei ein Hashem el yereyav. You don't have ein Hashem for every John, Dick, and Harry. But first your pasuk. Ein Hashem el yereyav. Hu lamiyachalin l'chastek. That you expect, want. You sit in awe of God. V'zulazeh, and so many more of this. You look carefully, all the psukim which deal with constant Hashgacha are always about the Chasidim, the Yereim. That's what we're talking about. The constant Hashgacha, which Hashgacha are we talking about here? The Hashgacha which is special for the Chassid or Tzaddik or Yereim, the different nouns we have so far, are basically the Matzil from the Mikrim of the Klolim. That's the Ramban. Now, but those Klolim are God-made. Those Klolim are God-made. God made those Klolim. Now let's go back to the Ramban in, so here we clearly see that. Now let's go back to this Ramban in Bay. And let's try to reconcile between them because we're going to have to. He wrote overtly and said that Rishoyim are Nitanim Lemikrim. Everybody's Latim Lemikrim except for Chasidim. And then there's a shmirah to be shomer him from the mikrim of the klal, right? Is that what he says? Now, what does that mean? If the idea of mikrim means that God chooses to, something that falls on you, God chooses to judge you, well, he's going to protect you from his judgment. How would you understand this Ramban that I just read you in Vayera? You have to say this is what you would call haphazard. It just happened because that are the odds of nature. Not that if it happened to you, there was a judgment on you. If what happened, there was a judgment on you to miss the plane, so we say by the chassid, he doesn't allow it to happen. If it weren't a judgment, he was chayv b'din. What do you mean? He's going to protect him from din shamayim. God's going to be paskin halacha that he's chayv to lose his contract, but he's going to protect him from that. What? Verstehnish, nicht dynamis. God's going to paskin that he's certain yisurim, but he's going to protect him from the yisurim. It's like doiche biyoda echas v'chabe biyoda shniya. How do you understand this Ramban? The mavur Ramban, the things have with mikrim equals without mishpat and gzeira. The things happen b'mikra because of the klolim without mishpat or gzeira or oynish. But the chassid is protected from that. The chassid is not protected from oynish. No one's protected from oynish. Let's get that straight. No one's protected from it. In other words, he's not also protected from exar din shamayim. So often in Gemara in Tainus, you have it, I'll say it now about Peh. Rav Shmuel never walked near a wall which was wobbly. There was a wall where they were there for 13 years. It was a shtickle weak, but it was wobbly. They didn't go near it. Why? Because they said if you go in that and you walk out, it's a nes. One day, I think it was Rav Abba was there, so Shmuel, and he went near the wall, so Shmuel says to Rav, we should go around, right? We detour this. No. He says, no. If Rav Abba is here, his chus, it definitely won't fall, so we can follow him. Kumtosh is a nes, right? Does it mean to say that the wall is, if the wall falls on Rav Shmuel, there was a gzeira on him? For Shenish. So what's the nes that there's either there's a gzeira or not a gzeira? How can you say that if the wall would fall on him, it would be a gzeira, and the fact the wall didn't fall on you is a nes? It has to be, it didn't fall on you because there's no gzeira. Is was meant is it's a nes. The teretz shteda that a malkim sakana, that's one of the mikrim of the klolim. It's called the laws of gravity. It's a malkim sakana in a place of mikrim. It's like more in tinus. Daf chafam at base. This mikrim, which the laws of gravity say, hey, this is dangerous. And therefore, if you stopped it because God prevented that from happening for you because you're a chassid, or you have enough schuyos of menakim leimus schuyos, the Gemara says. You went under a kira ua and it didn't fall, menakim leimus schuyos. Sometimes you may not be a chassid, but you have a lot of schuyos. So we're going to, you're going to have to cash in on your chips for this not to fall on you. In other words, does it mean to say that there was a gzeira to fall on you, but because of your schuyos, there's no gzeira? No one dreams that episodes have to pshat in that Gemara with Rav Shmuel, everything, they had a gzeira thing falling on them. Who are we talking about? And only the schusser, Rabba, it's not going to, they didn't want to use their chips. Rabba has so many schuyos, so he's definitely protected. Okay? What does that Gemara say? It says Kira equals a Makam Sakana. It means to say that there's Mikrim here because of the Klalim. This is going to happen. This can happen. And therefore, a person which is Roy for a Chassid Gomer, God will intervene with the laws of nature. That's called a Nes. So Rav Yeshua were afraid they weren't Roy Lekach, but Rabbi Barabba, they knew he was Roy Lekach. So for the Gemara, that a Kira Ua is a Nes. It means to say that it can fall on you b'mikra. So you want to know, that's the source of this Ramban. Like more in Tainus, Chofam and Beis. Let's put this on the table. Yes, terrible things can happen to people. And it's not because there was exardin. I'll show another Gemara, and you have it in your sheet on your phone. It's an unbelievable Gemara in Chagiga of Dal Damed Beis. So the Gemara in Chagiga. It's one of these nice stories. The name is very interesting, but forget it, I'm not going to, doesn't matter. So the Gemara says as follows. If you have an ear, you'll see certain things here. Reb Yosef, at the bottom of the page, I cut it down into a small sheet. It starts with Reb Yosef. It's your source number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It starts Reb Yosef ki moti lahai kra. Rabbi Yosef came to this pasuk, Bachi, he would cry. Which pasuk would he cry about? The pasuk says, Yesh nispa l'lei mishpat. Pasuk in Mishnah, Yesh nispa b'lei mishpat. There are people that die without any mishpat shamayim. Often the pasuk. So it's Rashi HaKadosh, just to put this on the table. Yesh nispa b'lei mishpat, you have that also in your thing. Yesh kole, someone is destroyed. Ve'ein oven biyada, he has no sin. V'lo yihaya mishpat lispait, there was no mishpat shamayim that should be destroyed, and yet he's going to be destroyed. Equals, there's a possibility of dying without Avera and without any mishpat. Do I need more than a Gemara? Now, that you tell me that Ramban means whatever that I'm going to describe them thinks what they mean. It means the Ramban knew a shtickle Gemara. Okay. Yesh nispa l'lei mishpat. What's the case? The Gemara is a beautiful story. So the Gemara Omar. See, you should know. You should really learn Agadas. I mean, there's a lot there. You just have to know it. Gemara says you want to know God, you have to learn Agadas, right? So you must say to learn Agadas. Good idea. in Yankiv, during Moshe Seder, you'll get all of Hashkafas Chazal. I mean, real Hashkafas Chazal. Not watered down later day saints. You'll get what the primary sources say. But yeah, they have it in English. I mean, learn Hashkafa through Chazal, Bord Kulama, Chazal and the Rishonim. Why does everybody have to look for, you're all Mormons, you all look for Latter day Saints. Why can't we learn Gemara and Rishonim for goodness sakes? So to your Omar, Mi Ikid Azabla Zimne. Is there really someone that Lee gets out of the world when his time hasn't come yet? Gemara asks, is that really true? So the Gemara in, yeah. Kiha Darav Bibi Barabaye. When I go for a Shiva call, I never say this. You understand? Because everyone wants to, yeah, obviously it was meaningful, etc., and all that. You know, I know. This is the Gemaras you don't talk about in certain situations. But you have to know the truth, because you have to know what you believe in. Granted that we all accept the Talmud. It may not fit with the Baal Shem HaKadosh, but it's a Gemara. Okay? So the Gemara, Kihadir of Bibi Barabaya, have a Shechiach Gabei Malach HaMavis. Interesting guest he used to have. You know, Rabbi Rabbi had this constant guest. The Malach HaMavis used to come in to drink coffee with him. Don't know what it means, but that's what Gemara says, okay? I mean, I would have chosen some other Malach, and obviously it's Malach HaMavis. Okay. I thought about it a lot, and I came to a conclusion, because the Gemara said the Malach HaMavis and the Satan the same thing, right? And the Satan is basically God's minister of development. His job is to throw hoops at you to teach you how to jump and succeed. Ultimately, you accumulate a lot of hoops and you jump well, then you go, then you get the big prize up in the cherry pie in heaven. Okay, the Malach HaMavis says, okay, guys, it's time for the cherry pie. Nice guy. So it's actually, it's basically, it's the guy who trains you, you know, when you learn how to ride a horse, you have to jump over these things, you know, what they're called again, these little walls. So these guys are throwing hoops at you, all your nisyonis, all the pituyim, all the, hey, what about that? That's all hoops. They're throwing hoops at you. You got to learn how to jump. He's probably God's favorite minister because he's helping humanity get to where God wants it to get. Without him, there's no reason to be here. You're not doing anything. He creates the challenges for you to succeed. That's how I figured out. That must be shot in this Gemara. Otherwise, it's very morbid that Malach HaMavis should visit you for coffee. So here it is. So this Malach HaMavis was a good friend of Rabbi Barabai. Did you know that Malach HaMavis has agents? Okay. He says, you know, he's a minister. Yeah, he has Gaboim. He told his mini, you know, I don't know, Archangel Mavis, you know, Darga 4, he says, do me a favor, Zil Isli Miriam Migdaleh Seyar Nasha. Get me Mary Magdalene, the one who grows women's hair. Migdalah Seyar Nasha. I want you, what does she do? So Rashi says, Haroigis Miriam Hamkala Seyar Nashim. She's the hairdresser. She makes the braids. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, she has to go now. So please bring me her soul. You know, take your Santa Claus bag and get it, you know, okay, bring it to me. Okay, then what happens next? So to Gemara, Ozel, he went, isolate, but he brought back someone else by mistake. Miriam Migdalah did Arnica. She was the babysitter. He made a mistake, killed the wrong lady. Fool, I told you to bring me the lady, the hairdresser. You bring me the kindergarten teacher. The wrong lady. Okay, if that's because I'll put her back. He says, nah. If I see, so you bought her. Let you be part of the number. It's okay. This is Nishmul and Mishpat. No Mishpat. She wasn't supposed to die. The idiot made a mistake. And she's dead. And but once you're here, Chisa Mason we don't do. Okay? We take her, for sure Gemara. Do I have to argue with the Gemara? How'd you do it? How'd you get together? I mean, it wasn't supposed to be your time. So what does the Gemara say? She was not supposed to die. But having a kitna mitara biadei, Rashi, Whatever she was holding, a hot iron of a tanur in her hands. Okay, a hot iron. Umachri tanura, and she was cleaning, sweeping the tanur. She made a mistake. She put it on her foot. And what happened? Kadcha. Obviously, she burnt her foot terribly. She was in a makom sakana. She's in a makom sakana. ISIS, he took her. What does it say here? If you're in day, you're in a makom sakana, no mishmar, no nothing. He's there, he collects you. Open the Gemara. You put yourself in a makom sakana, he'll take you. Is there a mishpat? No. Was he supposed to be there for you? No. He was flying by. I don't know how this works exactly. And he sees a makom sakana. You're not part of the number. You're not supposed to be there. There was no mishpat, nothing. So she died because she put herself in a makom sakana isra mazla. The other one didn't die, and there was a time had come. The Gemara says, "What do you do with her?" So that's another part of the story, which is an important part. I'll leave it for the Muslims to say about Mabra Midois. That's what I need from this Gemara is one thing which is clear as day. It's clear as day. Yesh nispa b'lei mishpat. That yes, you can die. It's not because it was a decree. You can die because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Malach HaMavis agent happened to be there, and you were in a makom sakana. Wrong place, wrong time, you're gone. You went into a makom sakana and you died. Yeah. Doesn't mean your time had come. It doesn't mean anything. It does not at all. Mikra. That's called Nasrun al-Mikrim. Makom sakana is chukei aklalim. You could have got healed, but since the makom sakana is an Israel mazla, you don't have that, which you know, you're you don't have mazla anymore, therefore you're vulnerable. Therefore you can die of infection, etc. If you put yourself in makom sakana, you don't have the natural protections which normally you would have. Okay, that's a klal. Does it say here there's a kitrug? You know, I once heard a shtickle Torah on this. It means to say that when you're in that situation, there's a special kitrug. I know Gemara and Rashi. Steht nicht gekitrug da. Da steht Isra Mazla. Does it say there's a kitrug here? No. It says Isra Mazla. She doesn't know Mazla. I mean, Gemara Babakama, Bezim and Bez the bottom. Adam Islam Mazla. Therefore, it's not that easy to take his soul away from him. But as soon as you have a depletion of your Mazla, it's easy to drop your soul from your body. And that's when the Malach HaMavos will pick you up. Equals a makom sakana creates less Mazla. Once there's less mazel, you're going to be taken. Add this Rashi, Le'em and Aleph and Chagiga to the Gemara of Bezim and Bezin in Baba Kama, and there you have it. It's as clear as day. It's a davar pasha. Therefore, we clearly know when the Ramban says Nasun Mikrim, yeah, it means Kipshutik and Mashmoy. It also means more than that. Not every death or not every occurrence has to be because of a mishpat. And that's the Gemara I mentioned for Antinus. You're going to be in a makom sakana, kir natui. It's dangerous. It's not this Xavier that's going to fall on you. There is no Xavier that's going to fall on Rav Shmuel. But that's a makom sakana. And therefore less mazel. Once it's less mazel, if the mikra is you're going to fall, you're going to die, whether your name is Rav Shmuel. Unless you have a nes equals your begetter chassid, God will save you from the laws of nature. So now we know one thing, there is mikra, and the chassid is nitzum and mikra. Mikra doesn't mean haphazard reality. It means to say the normal laws of nature. Mikra hateva. The normal laws of nature, that's what happens. And that's a lot of things, including not eating healthy, including drunk driving, including multiple things, okay? Okay, so now we know one thing. We can now chalk up that when something happens to you negatively at the moment, it definitely could be einish. We will see shortly, not shortly, next week, there's a Gemara that says you should look at everything as einish. You don't chalk up the mikra. Theologically, we're supposed to look at everything as einish. Why? Because the fact of the matter is our debit sheet is so big. Why would you think it's mikra? You got a debit sheet as long as who knows what, going all the way to the Gullus. You know what I mean? Yeah, don't worry about it. There's plenty of things to hit you for. So you always have, it's a fush of chinuch. The chinuch is it's also on your sheets. I sent the last thing. The chinuch says this, when the idea of the dinim mitzayra is to teach us that whatever happens to us, first of all, don't look at it as a mikra. It doesn't mean there won't be a mikra. You don't look at it as a mikra. It's enough in Igmar and Brachas. Ra Adam Yisurim Mashmishim and Boyim Alav. Yifashmish Ramaisav. Why? Maybe it's a mikra. It's 10 signs of mikra, but your responsibility is to it's not to look as mikra. Your responsibility to check. What about your sheet? And believe me, you have it. What does the Gemara say? There's some people which can't find an Aveira. This is like beyond me. There's a big mabit on this in a book. It's a book called Beis Elokim. Leimotza. Sometimes I think about where am I and where's the Gemara? This is a Gemara in Brachas. With stuff. Hey, you have it. I sent it to you. So the Mabit explains if you have a problem with your tongue, think of the Averis you did with your tongue, with your mouth. You have an infection in your right arm. Think of what Meisim Toivim did you do with your right arm? You have a leg infection. Take a look at your Halicha B'dracha. What did you go with? No joke. Imamish describes how you're supposed to look at Aver. The Gemara says, Pish Pesh, V'loi Motza. I kept everything. I did nothing wrong with my tongue, and I still have these herpes things. What am I supposed to store? What am I supposed to do? It'll be Bittul Torah. Bittul Torah takes your whole body. Whatever happens to you, Bittul Torah is there. Okay? And basically implying, don't forget about it. Then what happens to a person which mamish doesn't have Bittul Torah? Ver does, the Gra. That only had 3 minutes of Bittul Torah in his life, that he accounted for his whole life, made a cheshbon. There's 3 minutes which I didn't learn enough. His whole life. Okay? So the Gemara says, what do you do with a person like that? So this is obviously, he had Yisurim to give him a more schar in Elam Haba, to clean him a little bit, he should have more schar in Elam Haba. He says, Yisurim Ashal Ava, it's called Rashi. He says, Rashi, I know that we shouldn't agree with this. Rashi says, Yisurim Shal Ava, because I love you, I'm going to make it a little hard life here to get more there, which is totally a machlekes Rishonim what Nisoyin is. The Rambam disagrees with this concept totally. He understands Yisurim Shal Ava differently. Let's go. But whatever it is, that's a Gemara, okay? The Gemara clearly says we have a theological obligation to look at everything as oh, that's very nice. What's that? Is that a Shabbos clock? Yes, because the light in the Spanish is open. What happens at this stage? Do we say goodbye? Do I continue in the dark? This is dramatic. Okay. We won't have a candlelight. Okay, goodbye. Get out of here. I don't know what happened here. Episode. No. Good. Where are we holding? What was the last word I said? I don't hear. Yeah, so it says little bittul Torah, okay? Steht da, guys, obviously, what steht da? Steht da before in the Gemara that you're mechuyev to look at all Yisurim as possible einish. No, what's the Ramban going to do with that Gemara? What the Ramban we just learned, what's the Gemara going to do with this Gemara? We have an idea. So you have Nispa B'lei Mishpat. The Torah says, you're right. It happens, but every person is chayv to first check whether he doesn't have a virus. And usually you do. That's what it means to say. It doesn't mean that there's no mikra. It means as far as your theological world is concerned, you must attribute it to your Einish because that's what Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. If you read the Chinuch, you have that in your sheet that I sent you, the last piece, the last mail I sent, last piece was a Chinuch. Let's just read that Chinuch. Bishar Shea Mitzvah, it's a Chinuch in on Kuf Samachtes and on Mitzayra. Likvay b'nafsheseinu ki hashgacha Hashem yisbarach al pratis al kol echav ve'echav bnei Adam. V'che'enav pekuches al kol darcheim, k'mo shekasuv ki einav al darkei ish v'chol tzad yir'eh. V'chein uzarnu letet leiv v'lacholi hara v'lachshov ki ached garam oto. We are supposed to attribute it to sin. Kfar amru zichron levracha ki bechet lashon hara yavoy b'raiv, etc. V'lo nikach derech mikra. We don't just take it. Maybe it happened because of laws of nature and a virus. Now, what does it mean? It doesn't mean mikra is something without it. No, it means within the mikra of the klalim. Everybody knows chinuch, knows that all the shoshim of the chinuch are based on Moreh Nevuchim. If you know the book, they're all copies of Moreh Nevuchim. Okay, let's understand. We all know the Shittas, the Ramban Moreh Nevuchim, the Ramban, in Al Torah, quotes that his source is the Moreh Nevuchim. Where is that? That's in the Ramban in Iyov, which I asked you to look at, where he quotes his whole parsha, his whole Shita, and his brothers, and he says, Moshe Kosav Rabbi Moreh Nevuchim. So let's get this straight. Okay, what he's saying here is very simple. We're not supposed to attribute it to Mikra. Why? Because we are supposed to first attribute, as far as my responsibility is concerned, I first will have to attribute is their Einish. Now, does that mean to say that if you drunk a drunk driver and you went into a wall, that's not, no, that was you. Don't apply it to hate. But if things happen, you have no reason to blame yourself. And you haven't been, so you're going to say, well, was it a virus or was it a virus? If your Chassidish is a virus, it's a virus. Okay, which a virus was it? Okay, that's what it's going to happen. Okay, this is the shaila on the table. So we're mechuyev to look for a virus. That's what it says here. Etc. And then he explains what Hashgacha is. You can read it further. You'll see he holds like Shittas or Ramban. We'll read the piece next time because it's already late. I want to stop. But there's a Shittas. The din is we look at things like Einish. That's our theological chayva. Could it be that it's mikra? It could be. But you know something? If it's mikra, that means to say you didn't have the protection needed to save you from mikra. So chsar. Because if you were a David by Hashem, you would have had the protection to save you from mikra, as the Ramban writes mefurish. The Bechasidav is Shaimram from the Pratit, the mikra of the Klalim in David Ben Tamid, right? I learned that with you just before. So manavshach, if something happens to you, if it was Einish, still purif. If it was mikra, why didn't I have protection? Why? That means I have a chisoin in my Yerushalayim. I'm not mekayim v'davka boy. Because any darga, the Ramban writes, any darga of dveikus boy helps. He writes that anashim beinanim, like me and you, sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. It depends on where we're holding at that stage of life and where we're up to. To what extent are we at this? I'm in an intense stage of God awareness. You're going to have it more than you had it the day before and more than you have the day after. The Nevi'im, the Ramban writes, they also changed because they weren't, we've up and downs in our God awareness, and sometimes we have an upsurge. I'm sure that you're going to live now much more with God awareness than you did when you were in high school, and if you were in NCSY Cold Out. You're going to live with heavy God awareness because Benno is going to say God, 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 and you're going to say hallelujah. You know what I mean? That's obvious. Right? I'm not joking. I'm serious. Okay. Afterwards, you're going to be a Park Avenue lawyer. I don't know about God. You'll think of God printed on green paper that you trusted. You know what I mean? That's the only God you'll be aware of. Okay. So you're going to have less Hashgacha Pratis. Everything depends. You're going to come Shabbos and Shul, and Pesach Kron's going to tell you a Shalosh Vadron story. You'll get more God awareness. You'll have more Hashgacha Pratis then. You won't have acid indigestion from your chokes. You know, so all these, the Ramban literally writes that under Beinanim, you go up and down. That's why you're mechuyev in the shtadlus of Gashmius. But that's an Adam Bainani. An Adam Bainani has to think, is it mikra, is it einish? Well, you could have both. Depends what I was holding, but you have to check, why am I going like this? Why am I not going straight? Why don't I have shmir the whole time? That's also pishmush remaisiv. Could be pishmush remaisiv of chait, or pishmush remaisiv of chisar and darkei chassidus of dveikus b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's that you're not being mekayim l'davka by the way you should be done. That isn't that good either. So one has to put this on the table. That is a davar pashut. It's before Ramban. It's before we just showed you Gemaras, right? The Gemara in Tainus, the Gemara over here with Mary Magdalene that had the hair, man. You know, she lived, and the kindergarten teacher got snipped. Why? Because it was a makom sakana. Now tell me pshat and Ramban and boy. Now your job. So what does this one mean? Now try to read this Ramban. What does this Ramban mean? Ramban here writes, again, we explained that what meant. Shem Yisrael Torah Kula. Correct, that there's no Teva. Remember we learned that? There's no Minhag Sholim. It's not just, it was that way. There's a creator, and therefore the laws of science were created by him. And he has that. What does that mean? Does it mean there's nothing that happens because of the laws of science? Is he negating what he said before? Is he against the Gemara? Forget what he said before. What about the Gemara? Ramban says before it's not that way. There's klalim and you're nasan lemikrim. The Gemara says you die without mishpat. So whatever the sentence says, he's not negating a Gemara. So you can manipulate and say the Ramban there means X, the Ramban here means Y. But this has to now be reconciled with the Gemara of Kukir Ra'ua and the Gemara of Miriam Megad L'Saira. Two Gemaras. So you can't, like many people try to do, play between two Rambans and make a little kimtis. It's the Shtim has to work with Gemaras. What did two Gemaras do? What does this Ramban do with two Gemaras? That's your question on the table. Vashteta. He says, well, what does he say? Look carefully. What did the man just say? That means everything in life is either sachar or einish? What if someone which doesn't have, he's a child, he doesn't have sachar and he doesn't have einish? What about things that happen to him? Let's say he's a yassim, so it's not because of his father's fault, okay? What happens to a person which doesn't have sachar and doesn't have einish? Nothing happens to him? How do you understand this Ramban? I say this because this is a Ramban which is used so terribly all over the place to say whoever doesn't believe that everything is straight to Zeres Elyon is a kaifer. You know, you must have heard this a million times. And I tie to these people like Koru Leishonav Leishimshu. Because they didn't read like a mensch. First of all, they didn't know two Gemaras. But worse than that, they didn't think of that other Ramban. I can live with. But read this. Are you trying to say that everything is either schar v'einish and there's nothing in the middle? He doesn't just say Akol b'Xeres Elyon. What does he say? When he says after Akol b'Xeres Elyon, what's he saying? In context of what I'm saying, that everything's either schar or einish, that's the Xeres Elyon. He doesn't say the three possibilities, schar, einish, or Xeres Elyon. He says, Akol b'Xeres, so what does he say? If he does mitzvahs, he has sachar. If he does averis, he has yechishanu einshay. Hakol b'Xeres Elyon. That's summing up those two words. All of this, either sachar or einish, is b'Xeres Elyon. So what is he now? How does that add up what was said before? He says anything that happens to you is not mikra, but it's a mishpat of either schar or einish. Does it mean everything that happens to you? Or does it mean the person who doesn't believe that it doesn't have a chelik teres Moshe? We know that that's not what you think, that everything happens to you is either schar or einish. We know that things happen to you because of a kira, because of a stupid malach which made a mistake. We know that, okay? So it means to say, but you are mechuyev to look at everything in the eyes of schar v'einish. Kim over the gemara and brachas stuff. Hey, ra yisur memashmish mebayim yefashmish memaisa. And the chinuch says, yeah, we're mechuyev to look at things through the eyes of schar v'einish. And if you don't look at it that way, ein lo chachetik b'teres Moshe. That's what the Ramban says. And what are the nisim nistorim? The fact that I do have Averis and all of a sudden things happen to me. That a metaphysical reality reflects itself in a physical reality, that's not logical. It's beyond logic, but that's called a nes. Nes means to say it represents the fact that God created the world. That's all this Ramban is saying. The Ramban is not saying that everything happens to me is exera. It can't be, because he's not saying that. He's saying everything is either schar or einish. In other words, until there's einish and no einish b'shma until you're 20. That means you don't exist until 20. Anything ever happened to you bad before 20? You're not there yet. I broke my arm at the age of 10. I definitely wasn't chayiv einish b'shma. Let's get that straight. And since they're not a behema, the Rishonim say that the behema of a person which is chayiv in yisurim, so that is behema. There's no such din by a cotton. Okay, so let's get this straight. I want to understand why did I break my arm? I didn't have sechar. I don't think b'schar that I broke my arm. Okay, so it must have been einish. I could have had einish. The Gemara says there's no einish v'shamayim before 20, right? Often the Gemaras. Okay, so now please tell me how did I break my arm? According to Ramban, it couldn't have happened. It didn't happen. Didn't happen. Theologically, it couldn't happen. It means it didn't happen, right? But are we serious here? I mean, Mom, you're not allowed to be an idiot. Okay, so what happened? Things happen that they're not schar and einish. So then what's he saying? So what's he saying? I don't even want to tell you. You tell me what he's saying. He's talking about how you're supposed to perceive things. What's his marker? A gemur and bruch is taf hayu mit aleph. Ra odi yisur mashmim boy malav yefashmish b'masov. La matzah yitl bebitl tayr. Don't worry about it. Very good. Now what's a cotton going to do? A cotton hat nicht gefashmish b'masov. Doesn't have ma'asim. So Yisurim coming out of cotton, what do we say? What do you think? What? Thank you. You've been here all evening. Okay. What did you think? Yeah. Well, if you thought it was mikra, that means what happened to him? He got a cold. Which includes all sicknesses. A car ran over him. The kid was in the wrong place in the wrong time. It's a makam sakana, and a makam sakana is less than a bay. He's like a behemoth shein lamazel. According again to Gemara Babakama, look at the bottom of Beis Amidal Beis. Okay, you're like a behemoth shein lamazel. Behemoth shein lamazel. It's easy to you're vulnerable. The malach hamavis chaps you, something else chaps you, whatever they play football with you if you're in a makam sakana. Doesn't verstehen them. Otherwise, how are you going to explain children before 20? So, a korchach, whatever you're going to say, I'm not going to tell you pshat, whatever you're going to say, you cannot say that the Ramban here is written the way it is to be written in the simplistic, literal way. It's against often a Gemaras, outside of the fact there's no way that anybody thinks everything is either sechar or einish. So what does the chinuch mean when he says we're not supposed to look at things like mikra? There's definitely mikrim. What does a child do beforehand? The Torah says you're right. But you're not supposed to look at it that way. Your theological obligation is attributed to you. You're supposed to look at your debit sheet. Why? That's where it is anyway. Okay? Don't worry about it. You don't look at mikrim. You look at do tshuva. Okay? Get that straight. That's your theological obligation. Now, whether that's the Pshat Ramban could be. I'll give you another Gemara, a very famous Gemara, Chol Daf Zayin of base. Ein odem noikiv et spoil lemata elim ke machrizin oisim elamala. You must have heard that. What does the word noikif mean? I want someone to tell me what it means. You must have heard it a million times. What does no kaif mean? What? Negif, bruise, Rashi. Yes, that's Einish. There's what's the Gemara saying? That when we look at a person that got a bruise, we don't attribute to Mikra. We decide that what? It's Einish. Great. It's the same Gemara. Raw, Adam Yisurim, Mashrim Balab, Yifashush Remaisov. So that Gemara is just like the Gemara in Brachas. Does that mean you can't get hit by Mikra? What do you do with the Gemara in Tainus? What do you do with the Kir Natui of Rav and Shmuel? What do you do with this poor Mary over here that she simply put herself in a Makkah Sakana Isser Mazla and she got nipped? The Alpi Rive, that's what happens to most people. That's why they have to see it that way. So though anybody quotes this famous Gemara, this is a riot that everything happens. It doesn't, when you have a little myopic little site like this, so you think, oh, 1 minute, look at the big picture. Put the Gemaras together. That's pushing out what it means. Unless you're going to say it's a machlekes sugyus. Rav Shmuel and the Gemara by Migdal, Mir Migdal, Megad Sarah over there, that's one shita. And the Gemara in Chulm and the Gemara in Brachas is another shita. Gzunter, hey, this is childish. So you have to understand, you have to be able to reconcile Gemaras to create what the Hashgacha is. It's very clear what the Hashgacha is. You don't attribute it to Mikra. That's your theological obligation. Right. Can it be Mikra? It can be. But then you have another problem. Why weren't you protected? Get that straight. That doesn't get you scot-free. Why weren't you protected? Unless you totally went and you killed yourself, that's something. Forget that. That's not Hashgacha. You're suicidal. You're gonna burn to hell for it. It's as simple as that. You take a gun to your head and you shoot. Don't blame God. Don't say it's your tank came. Don't say anything. And you killed yourself. If you lived a terrible lifestyle and your liver went, used to verbring a lot, you know what I mean? And his liver went, don't blame God and don't blame your Averis. Blame your bad, you're president of the Kiddush Club, and that's why they should put a mitzvah up over there. That's where you died, okay? You understand? That's the emes. Okay, that should be enough for the evening. There's still a lot to learn, but that's number one. Well, let me just close this thing. I don't have to figure out how to close it.